My name is Colin. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation and a former candidate for Urbana City Council. We're here today to discuss a current crisis in our community. Right now, nearly 5,000 families are at risk of eviction, of being kicked out into the streets, just as we're going into the cold season, and while the COVID-19 pandemic still surges. As the PSL in Champaign-Urbana, we have been consistently organizing through our Cancel the Rents campaign and our current anti-eviction work to address this crisis. And thankfully, Fox News Illinois covered our campaign, and also the Sheriff Dustin Heuermann's response to this campaign. In that interview, the sheriff informed us that he does in fact believe that housing is a human right. We wholeheartedly agree. And that's why we've been doing this work since May of last year. That's why we've raised the demands of cancel the rents and mortgages. That's why, in part, I ran for city council this past spring. And that's why we are so invested right now in preventing evictions. But the sheriff has told us that his hands are tied. That if the courts give him an order, he has to carry it out. I would respond to that by asking the sheriff to publicly take a stand, to make clear what is his position. Does he support the continuation of evictions, or does he support a continued moratorium? And if the sheriff wants to keep people housed, wants to maintain the human rights of our neighbors, he should join us in calling on Judge Olmstead and Chief Judge Rosenbaum to place an indefinite stay on all eviction proceedings until all back rents and mortgages are dealt with. We're going to continue to do everything in our power to keep our neighbors housed. We ask the courts and the sheriff to do the same. With that, I'd like to introduce Front, one of our lead organizers in this campaign.
Thank you, Colin. My name is Harant Gebansi, and I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. As Colin alluded to, we are in a crisis, and I want to stress how current and urgent that crisis is. The COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing. It has not ended, and nor have its economic effects on our community. I want to stress how urgent and how current the crisis of evictions in Champaign County is. Right now, 4,906 households across Champaign County are at risk of eviction. This represents 13% of all rental households in the county. And these numbers have not been improving. In fact, since just May of this year, the number of households at risk of eviction has been increased by over 1,300. Right now, the total amount of rent debt owed throughout the county is nearly $14.8 million. That represents an increase of over $3.7 million since just May of this year. This crisis is ongoing, it is urgent, and it is not improving. And that is why a few months ago we launched our campaign against evictions in Champaign County. As part of that, we have gone door to door collecting support for our demand to suspend evictions countywide. So far, over 400 residents across the county have signed on calling for a suspension of evictions. In doing so, we've also done our best to help anyone we can file for emergency rental assistance. We've brought these demands to the people, we've brought these demands to city government, and we had a major victory last week when the city of Urbana, when we brought these demands before the city council of Urbana, and all 7 members of Urbana City Council answered the call of their community by signing on to a letter calling on Sheriff Dustin Heuermann of Champaign County to immediately suspend evictions. We also brought our concerns that we encountered when helping residents file for emergency rental assistance before City Council. And this week we were glad to hear that these concerns were communicated to the Regional Planning Commission, who is receptive and actively working to staff their phone lines and post an FAQ lowering the barriers to their emergency rental assistance application process. We are in this fight because this crisis is urgent. Families, the elderly, children, disabled, and marginalized communities are most at risk. And we need leadership to step up and protect our communities against evictions. That's why it was disappointing last week when Sheriff Heuermann responded publicly to this demand, but left more questions than answers. Sheriff Heuermann said that he doesn't believe it's his position at this time to say that the moratorium should be extended further. And we ask, why was it his position to create the moratorium last year, but it is not now? The moratorium was created because of the public health crisis. Ask any public health authority, they will tell you that the public health emergency has not ended. It is ongoing, and the need for an eviction moratorium is ongoing. The eviction moratorium last year happened, and we know that another moratorium could happen. We know that it is possible. It is not a matter of whether it is possible, it is a matter of why it is not happening. Sheriff Heuermann spoke about the eviction moratorium he put in place last year. He clearly is proud of it. He lists it as one of his accomplishments on his campaign website. And we agree that an eviction moratorium was the right thing to do last March. And it is the right thing to do for our community right now. So we want to know, does Sheriff Heuermann support an eviction moratorium? If so, what will he do to make it happen? And if not, what does he have to say to the hundreds of residents who have called on him to suspend evictions, and to the thousands of families across the county who are at risk of being homeless? If the sheriff said that his hands are tied because when he receives an order from a judge to evict someone, he doesn't have a choice. And we understand this, but has he talked to the court? If so, what was the outcome? If not, why not? These are the questions we have been left with from this response. We need to know what the sheriff's position is and what he is doing about it. Again, this is a crisis. It was a crisis last year. It is a crisis now, and we need action. So we are calling on Sheriff Heuermann to clarify his position on an eviction moratorium, to answer the call of residents, of organizations, and of the City Council of Urbana to suspend evictions. We understand that this might need to be a collaborative effort with the judiciary. This is why we are also calling on the 6th Judicial Circuit of Illinois to collaborate to stop all eviction proceedings, in addition to suspending all evictions in the county. Sheriff Heuermann said that he believes housing is a basic human right. And as Colin said, we agree. And now is the time for the sheriff to show that that is not just a meaningless platitude. The sheriff has power, and it is the time for the sheriff to use that power to protect this basic human right. That is why we are out in our community collecting support. That is why we are in city councils calling on them to act. That is why we are here today calling on the sheriff to take a position, to take action on this crisis. And we will continue fighting against evictions. We will continue calling on the sheriff to protect our residents, to keep our community members housed to protect the basic human right to housing, which he has said he believes in. And we will not stop calling on the sheriff and calling on the circuit court to act, to suspend evictions until they take action, until they come out and tell us what they are going to do to protect our communities. Thank you all for listening. We are going to keep, as I said, we are going to keep fighting. We need all the help we can get. So please, anyone, call the sheriff, write to the sheriff, contact the sheriff, your local elected officials, the circuit court. We need leadership and we need action. Our local elected officials need to respond to the demands of this community to protect them. And we will keep calling on them. We will keep demanding action and answers until we win. Thank you.
Woo!